Good afternoon and welcome to Matters Financial and Geopolitical from a Frontier, and thank you as always for stopping by. Let me start with thanking ZDF TV, which is a German TV channel, for the interview in a very bucolic Nairobi garden today about the demographic dividend or demographic terminator. And I'm grateful to them for taking my thoughts. Macro thoughts: China Commerce Minister Gao, China-US are in close and thorough talks on Phase 1 deal, reports First Squawk. So that's an interesting signal coming from the Chinese side. 13th of August, and prior to that, I'd said the most important currency to watch right now is the renminbi, and that is currently at 702.40. And that's the signal, the very clear signal in the noise. It's been the first responder for the Chinese to the trade war. And if there is a Phase 1 deal, we should see a sharp move through 7, below 7. Home thoughts when the storms come. This is an article by the Sheldrick Trust about the Savo. There is an indescribable feeling of joy when the first rains break. It's almost an instant transformation. What had been an arid palette, all peaches and greys, suddenly bursts into a verdant paradise, pulsating with life. The parched earth becomes saturated and the air becomes perfumed with that earthy smell of rain. Dormant seeds burst into life, colourful creepers blanket the trees and bullfrogs bob in the overfilling waterholes. This year the rains arrived early in Savo, which bodes well for the months ahead. We always marvel at how quickly these storms materialize. Blue skies are replaced by dramatic cloud formations. The air becomes pregnant as the heavy clouds roll across the horizon. And just as quickly as they arrived, they're gone. The skies turn crystal clear, the sun shines bright, and the glossy ground is the only hint of the storm that has just passed. No one celebrates the rain more than elephants. If the dry months are focused solely on survival, the wet seasons are all about play. There's a potential mud bath around each corner, and every budding shoot is a tasty morsel. Elephants frequent rivers and other known water sources during the dry season, so during these rainy times, they're eager to change up the scenery and explore new terrain. Quite beautiful and lyrical, wasn't it? And the beautiful photographs as well. And it is a remarkable landscape. Face this week and week with courage and fearlessness. This photo is by Jose Fragoso in the Nairobi National Park via Jambo magazine. And that took me because of that photograph. Whoever controls the territory possesses it. Possession of territory is not primarily about laws and contracts, but first and foremost a matter of movement and circulation. This is another photograph by Jose Fragoso, hippopotamuses exhaling clouds of water droplets backlit by the early morning light, clouds of gold. That was taken in the Masai Mara. Came across an interesting article in Futurity News, why the Nile River hasn't changed course in 30 million years. Scientists have finally solved the geologic mystery of the Nile River's unchanging path. And they made another discovery. The river is about 30 million years old, 6 times as old as previously believed. They discovered that if not for the mantle movement keeping the river on course, the Nile would have turned west long ago, probably changing the course of history along with it. The Earth's mantle is composed of solid rock that flows like a fluid over long periods, Like currents in an ocean, different areas of the mantle have different circulation patterns. The researchers connected the tilted nature of the Nile's topography to a conveyor belt of mantle rock pushing up against the Ethiopian highlands in the south and pulling the surface down in the north. From beginning to end, the gentle gradient keeps the Nile on a consistent northward course. We know that the high topography of the Ethiopian plateau was formed about 30 million years ago, says research scientist Thorsten Becker, a professor at the Jackson School. So now we know. Another photograph, breathtaking visions of Earth. This is again Jose Fragoso. This is in the Nairobi National Park, right down towards Athi River Basin, which was a huge area where animals used to cross. I've read books from 100 years ago which described it as sort of paradise. Venice is apparently underwater, the worst case since the 4th of November 1966, high tide of its history since the terrible Acqua Granda of November 4, 1966, which had caused the city irreparable damage. And I concluded by saying the tide is high, the end is nigh. And that was an article I wrote on the 30th of September on the occasion of Greta Thunberg's intervention at Unga. Political reflections tailor to withhold that assistance for no good reason other than help with the political campaign made no sense. It was crazy. The US at the time was trying to support Ukraine as a frontline state against Russian attack. That was a tweet from El Rosen, and I listened to it last night, and I must say it was very damning, in my opinion. President Michel Aoun, you said that those who don't like the government should emigrate. I left 43 years ago. I am now in transit to Beirut just to make sure you emigrate. That's Nassim Taleb. And that took me back to that great Revolution radio mix by Ronnie Sekaili, which I found on SoundCloud, and I've been playing on loop because it's really got momentum. And 21st of October, I was writing about this new economy of anger. I spoke about how we'd recently witnessed the WhatsApp revolution in Lebanon. I was quoting Virilio, the revolutionary contingent attains its ideal form, not in the place of production, but in the street, where for a moment it stops being a cog in the technical machine and itself becomes a motor, a machine of attack, in other words, a producer of speed. I said the phenomenon is spreading like wildfire, in large part because of the tinder-dry conditions underfoot. Prolonged standoffs eviscerate economies, reducing opportunities, and accelerate the negative feedback loop. I quoted Gramsci, the crisis consists precisely in the fact that the old is dying and the new cannot be born. In this interregnum, a great variety of morbid symptoms appear. Now is the time of monsters. Kapuscinski, revolution must be distinguished from revolt. Coup d'etat, palace takeover. A coup or a palace takeover may be planned, but a revolution never. Its outbreak, the hour of that outbreak, takes everyone, even those who've been striving for it, unawares. They stand amazed at the spontaneity that appears suddenly and destroys everything in its path. It demolishes so ruthlessly that in the end it may annihilate the ideals that called it into being. I said this is a revolution, and it is a global phenomenon. If the crowd disperses, goes home, does not reassemble, we say the revolution is over. It is not over. More and more people are gathering in the streets. And I concluded by saying Unless we're now going to Xinjiang the whole world, the current modus operandi is running on empty. Senator Janine Áñez has officially proclaimed herself interim president of Bolivia. Before the definitive absence of the president and vice president as the president of the Chamber of Senators, I immediately assume the presidency is foreseen in the constitutional order, she said. Morales called Áñez's move to replace him part of the most cunning and disastrous coup in history. Early on Tuesday, he thanked Mexico for saving his life as he arrived to take up asylum, repeating his accusation that his rivals had ousted him in a coup. She tweeted, "I dream of a Bolivia free of indigenous satanic rites. The city is not for Indians. They better go to the highlands or El Chaco." That's what she tweeted according to Telesur English. Finally, elocuente mensaje e una imagen. Another photograph of her. Zero Hedge is saying, after Evo, the lithium question looms large in Bolivia. The main target is its massive deposits of lithium, crucial for the electric car. Bolivia's key reserves are in lithium, which is essential for the electric car. Bolivia claims to have 70% of the world's lithium reserves, mostly in the Salar de Uyuni salt flats. Tiananmen in Hong Kong, the alarming echoes of 1989. At first, when demonstrators began spilling into city streets, citizens were surprised by their audacity and struck by their idealism, openness, and elan as they confronted the might of the Chinese Communist Party. Demonstrators' demands were limited and answerable, their behavior civil and their marches orderly. Yet, as their numbers grew, they allowed themselves to entertain a heady sense of possibility, a hope that this time they might actually be heard. Such are the outlines of the Tiananmen Square protests that unfolded over 7 weeks in 1989. And also the protests unfolding now in Hong Kong. 30 years ago, the party's indignant supreme leader, Deng Xiaoping, ultimately could no longer restrain himself. On June 4, he ordered in troops who massacred protesters. The alarming parallels between then and now make it hard not to worry that Hong Kong could come to a similarly savage conclusion. Here you see police officers firing tear gas at protesters in the Sham Shui Po neighborhood of Hong Kong. As I've said before, I don't think it's possible to Xinjiang Hong Kong. Here you see the battle for the bridge from above via telegram, might be one of tonight's defining videos. Watch Hong Kong students defend their own university like a fortress. Ale tweets news. 21st of October, I spoke about the crusher of bones, Xi Jinping, and his algorithmic control. 7th of October, I said the folks in Hong Kong whom Xi is seeking to unmask so he can exercise algorithmic control over them are in open rebellion. Here you see a pizza delivery man in Hong Kong, that's from Hard Marrow. And if you're interested in a live feed, this is a live feed that was provided by Raoul GMI. Of the world's 736 million extreme poor in 2015, 368 million, half of the total, lived in just 5 countries, according to the World Bank: India, Nigeria, DR Congo, Ethiopia, and Bangladesh. Let's move on to the currency markets. The euro 110.11, dollar index 98.325, Japanese yen 108.66, Swiss franc 0.9876, the pound 128.44. The Australian dollar had a very poor session, 0.6797. India rupee getting closer to 72, 71.9125. South Korean won 1169.42. Brazilian real 4.1697. Egyptian pound 16.10. And the rand practically bang in the middle of the range at 1492.88. This is a 3-month chart of the dollar index. It's been much firmer than I expected of late. Euro dollar getting a little bit of a bounce after Germany missed a recession by a whisker, with a surprise 0.1% GDP expansion in Q3. That's from J.S. Blockland. Very interesting interview with Matthew Ball, The Streaming Wars. Right now, Netflix has more engineers than HBO has total employees. Worth listening. I'm bullish about Netflix, as I've said before, in an article which I wrote on the 23rd of September, Streaming Dreams and Netflix, Annals of Technology. I was quoting an article I read in 2012, people went from broad to narrow, and we think they will continue to go that way, spend more and more time in the niches, because now the distribution landscape allows for more narrowness. I think people are missing a trick here. They're all looking at US subscribers where there's a tremendous amount of competition, but Netflix is a global business, and I think most of the analysts have a blind spot when it comes to Netflix. I put out a conviction buy in September at a price of $270.75. Bloomberg is saying Bitcoin is close to sounding a sell alarm as recent rally cools. The trading range between Bitcoin's 50 and 200-day moving averages has diminished to its narrowest since June, potentially indicating that an inflection point may be on the horizon. Bitcoin's already fallen below its 50-day moving average. A drop below the 200-day could trigger a sell signal. And then I was saying on the 4th of November in an article called A Moment of Vision, the eye sees nothing. I was referencing the Bitcoin evangelists and saying that they're similar to the Ministry of Sound, 4 in the morning folks, otherwise known as the Bitcoin evangelists, who of course will be screaming, "Ali, can't just buy it, it's going to 50,000, it's going to 100,000, it's going to 1 million. I was then referencing China, which had given its positive imprimatur on Bitcoin and it spiked it above 10,000 that day, and Nick Carter says it took China about 3 days of being officially interested in blockchain to make their intentions clear. Transparent, panopti-chain, immutable social credit dystopia. And I said, I'm of the view that Bitcoin and crypto will turn out to be a Jeffrey Edward Epstein and his cast of characters level con, and I'm having nothing to do with it other than occasionally looking in and admiring the sophistication and level of the con. It's breathtaking. Bitcoin, this is a chart from Dragonfire, last trading at 8,575. 7th of November, I'd been bullish through 2017. 7th of November 2017, I said, Bitcoin, wow, what a ride. I was quoting the parabola, it is a curve, each of them feels unmistakably it is the parabola, which it was through 2017. They must have guessed, once or twice guessed, and refused to believe that everything always collectively had been moving toward that purified shape latent in the sky, that shape of no surprise, no second chance, no return. And then I was saying it was time to take profits, of course. It then surged even further, and I concluded by quoting Hunter S. Thompson, "Life should not be a journey to the grave with the intention of arriving safely in a pretty and well-preserved body, but rather to skid in broadside in a cloud of smoke, thoroughly used up, totally worn out, and loudly proclaiming, wow, what a ride." October 2014, I was drawing a comparison between Bitcoin and Ebola, and I said it's about escape velocity. Viruses exhibit non-linear and exponential characteristics. In another article, I was talking about the high-tech millennial crypto avocado economy and how it exhibits viral, wildfire, and exponential and non-linear characteristics, not unlike Ebola. And then 8th of January 2018, I was saying that Bitcoin captured the zeitgeist of our time, which is its defining spirit or its mood, and that capturing the zeitgeist of the now is not an easy thing because we're living in a dizzyingly fluid moment. WeWork bonds did not like the bailout. This is from the market ear. We did not see it coming, a more than 100% return in Tesla in less than 5 months. And as I said in October, I have to commend Elon Musk for teaching the world about what a short squeeze really looks like and feels like, and that's evident in the surge in the price of Tesla. Gold, let's take a look at where that is, 1470 area. Now look at this, it's really interesting. This is from Garquake, not a chart guy, but seeing big resistance for last 2 weeks to get WTI moving into 58. The resistance has been around where we are now, which is 57.50. You can see we've come up here severally and then backed off. And I agree with him that we're going to break through maybe as early as today, and then we're going to move very, very sharply higher. Compression on crude oil. From here it could start a small trend for an extension up to 60 or a retracement down to 55. This chart is from Miko Milito a couple of days ago, but it still has the same sort of overall picture that I'm talking about. Let's move on to sub-Saharan Africa. The value of Chinese trade with the continent rose from $2 billion in the year 2000 to $170 billion in 2017, making China Africa's largest trading partner. In addition, Chinese investment in Africa during the same period, both public and private, increased by 46% per year on average, and is present in 45 of the continent's 54 countries. But I take you back to FOCAC 2018, about which I was writing again in October, and I was referencing Xi Jinping's The End of Vanity, which I characterized at the time as a substantive linguistic recasting of China Africa by Xi Jinping. And then I was quoting one of my favorite passages from the Bible, Ecclesiastes. Vanity of vanities, says the preacher. Vanity of vanities, all is vanity. There is no remembrance of former things, nor will there be any remembrance of later things yet to be among those who come after. The African dictator Paul Biya of Cameroon was attacked in France by citizens of the Republic. This is a YouTube video, quite extraordinary. He kind of limped into his meeting with Macron. Sports is the next big thing in Africa, and I think investors here need to pay attention, pay close attention. This is the Raptors president, Masai Ujiri, at the Africa Investment Forum. Zambia's kwacha weakened past 14 for the first time since May. Currency fell 1.7% to 14.065 in Lusaka yesterday. Loss for the month is 5.5%, most in the world after Chile's peso, Taonga Clifford. I've written about Zambia several times. Last time was the 14th of October when I said the canary in the coal mine is Zambia. I quoted Charlie Robertson, who said investors have lost faith in government promises to get spending under control, and the government has fallen out with the IMF as well. Zambian Eurobonds, last time I checked, were trading at 60 cents in the dollar. Afreximbank still plans its IPO in London. Benedict Oroma says bank's interest in the IPO has not gone away. The chairman, Benedict Oroma, said at the same forum, plan was postponed because major developments in the bank should be reflected in information to shareholders. He said, without elaborating, we plan to go ahead With an IPO in London, the bank had hoped to raise $250 million and initially said that the shares would start trading in London in November. They are limit long Zimbabwe, and I think that's the declaration that they've got to give more granularity on. South African all shares up 6.83% year to date. Dollar versus Rand 14.9427. Egypt lures yield hunters with longest dollar bond on record. This is a 40-year note that they're selling. Yield guidance is about 8.6% for the bonds due in 2059. Those are a buy, I think. 4.95% for 4-year debt and about 7.5% for the 12-year notes, which is another buy in my opinion. The government is targeting as much as $7 billion from international markets this fiscal year and may sell its first Sukuk, Panda, Samurai bonds as well as green and euro-denominated notes. BNP, Citi, JP Morgan, Natixis and Standard Chartered are organising the bond sale, and they'll be oversubscribed. The Egyptian pound is at 16.13 and has been one of the best performing FX in the market. EGX 30, that's the Egyptian Stock Exchange, is up 12.06% year to date. Nigeria, all shares down 16.14% year to date. Ghana plans 21% spending surge in 2020 as the election looms, will ramp up spending by a fifth next year, and plans to raise as much as $3 billion in international markets as it prepares for an election in 13 months. Ghana's economy expanded more than 6% annually since 2017 on the back of additional oil exports. The government will target growth of 6.8% next year. That compares with the IMF's forecast of 5.6%. They tend to lack discipline in the run-up to elections. Ghana Stock Exchange is down 13.15% year to date. Ahmed Nasir, who is a prolific tweeter and an accomplished lawyer, says His Excellency Uhuru Kenyatta and the Deputy President William Ruto need to agree on the rules of this civil war, the referee and arbitration clause, and says looks like it will be very bloody and a long civil war. And these were the two headlines from The Standard and another newspaper, to wit. Total public debt stood at 62.3% of GDP as of June, the World Bank said in late October. When Kenyatta took over, public debt was at 42% of GDP. Kenya's top 5 export destinations in 2018 as a percentage of total exports were Pakistan 17%, Uganda 15%, USA 14%, Netherlands 13%, and the United Kingdom 12%. Wale Shonibare, the AFDB's acting vice president for energy, said the bank did not move forward with the Lamu coal transaction and had no plans to do so in the future. Adesina told Reuters at the conference in South Africa the bank took environmental concerns seriously and was focusing on renewable energy, adding that coal projects risked becoming stranded assets on the AFDB's balance sheet. This is a photograph I took of the setting sun in Lamu many years ago, and this is another photograph of a Lamu sunset by Peter Size 10. KCB reported Q3 results through September, and what I found interesting was the loan loss provision, which was lifted 224.7%. EPS was up 5.89%. International business, South Sudan up 271%, Burundi up 49%, Rwanda up 44%, Tanzania counter trend up 22%, and Uganda down 124%, for which I'm not sure what the reason was. James Mwangi, very counterintuitive and mercurial, says he's not set to retire until the year 2040. If you're interested in Equity Bank, they reported some good results as well. Kenya shilling firm at 102.1. Nairobi all share up 11.99%. NSE 20 down 6.78%. And if you want a bit of entertainment, watch this short video from Adam Splid. The city has been impossible to get around, and he tweeted what to do when stuck in Nairobi traffic with a VIP delegation to serve at KICC Kenya. Thank you for listening.